Good evening, and welcome to another Mothman podcast. Remember, the Mothman podcast is your number one source for sci-fi and paranormal investigations and research. I'm your host, Daryl Rourke, and with me,
I'm the co-host, Anne.
And Anne, this is, we've been talking about Travis Walton last week. And I think we're going to go into the being abducted side of things for just a minute. And there was another one that's that you really liked, and I want you to tell us about that one.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, and just to give you a little bit of background. These people were fairly reputable in their area, or reputable. Betty was a social worker. Barney was a postal worker. They were a mixed race couple, and they were members of the NAACP. So people really trusted them. They were avid churchgoers, and they really loved their dog. Everything that I found has pointed that out. They really loved their dog.
That was in a lot of the pictures that was showed in newspapers back at that time.
Yes, and let me tell you what happened. They were on their way back from vacation at Niagara Falls, and this was on September 15th, 1961. They were driving on a major highway in New Hampshire, and Betty sees a bright light, and she thinks it's a falling star. It starts moving towards them and just keeps getting bigger and brighter. They pull over at a picnic table to observe it, and they're seeing an odd-shaped object with lots of multicolored flashing lights. It is flying in front of the moon. Barney thought it was a plane, but it came towards them very rapidly, and Barney realized it wasn't a plane. They said it was a disc-shaped object, and it was at least 60 feet across, and it was illuminated with rotating lights. They said they jumped in the car and tried to get away from it, and they said that it was like it was playing cat and mouse with them. It was following them. Then it quickly descended to about 100 feet above the car, and Barney stopped in the road. Barney had a pistol with him, so he walked up, towards the craft, and he could see about 8 to 11 humanoid forms looking out of the craft at him. He stated that they were wearing glossy black uniforms and hats. They told him with telekinesis to stay where he was and just keep looking. He only remembers that, but he said that they may have told him more because he came running back to the car and told Betty, "They're going to capture us." Then the craft came over the vehicle again, and Barney drove away at a high rate of speed. He told Betty to watch for the object, but Betty said she didn't see anything. They did hear a rhythmic series of beeping and buzzing sounds, and they felt the car vibrate, and then they had tingling sensations pass through their body. They felt at this time like they had an altered state of consciousness, and they felt like their minds were really dull. Then they heard more beeping and buzzing, and then they were returned to full consciousness. When they looked at their speedometer, they noticed that they had traveled about 35 miles, but they couldn't remember driving it. They were able to recall a fiery orb that was in the road. This happened about 10:30 at night, and they ended up getting home around dawn, so they had lost a lot of time. Some things that they pointed out were their watches had stopped working, and they would never work again. They couldn't get them to work. Barney's binocular strap was broke. Barney's shoes were very scuffed up. They both felt like they needed to shower and scrub themselves compulsively, and they felt like they were removing possible contamination. Betty's dress had a weird pinkish powder all over it, and it was soiled and torn. And there were shiny concentric circles on the car's trunk that weren't there before. Dr. Benjamin Simon hypnotized them, and what he found out, the story that came out of Betty and Barney, was that Barney had drove away from the UFO and the car stalled. 3 men approached him and told him to close his eyes, and they put a black wrap around his eyes, and he said he felt like it pushed into his eyes. They were both taken to the craft and separated, and he was put on a rectangular exam table. They took a sperm sample, did a spinal exam, and his skin was scraped. They looked into his ears and his mouth and inserted a thin tube into his anus and then removed it. He was then taken back to the car, and he was left in a daze. The doctor that did their hypnosis, he diagnosed them with psychological aberration. Now, Betty's account of the incident, when they tried to get an account from her, she wouldn't tell much of her story because she said it was agony, being in that spaceship. Everything they did to her hurt. She said that a device was placed on her abdomen to check for pregnancy, and that it was extremely painful. And the captors, the aliens, showed her where they were from. During the hypnosis, she was able to write out a star chart, and later they were able to see that it was a chart of the Zeta Reticuli star system, which she would have no way of knowing. And this sounds outrageous. However, they maintained this exact story until their death. They didn't waver in any of their details.
Well, last week when we talked about Travis, we discussed the fact that we didn't really think that his ordeal was an abduction, because whenever we hear about these abductions, most people describe them kind of like Betty and Barney did.
Yeah.
About the probing and being uncomfortable and being placed on chairs and tables and that sort of thing. But Travis didn't have any of those things happening to him, and that's the reason we discussed that his was a completely different type of scenario than this one or the other ones that we'd hear about.
Yeah.
One other thing that Betty stated, and she described the Greys. Now, that was part of Travis has also described the Greys.
Yes.
And so, and then she also, they stated that there was human-like forms. So the Greys, we talked about them last week, were able to change
to the Nordics.
Just like we change into a overcoat, they can change into another person that makes us less frightened of them and more at ease, if you can be more at ease at a time like that. But it does psychologically, they know us. They know how we feel. And talking about the star chart that she drew, that just leads me to think that there are extra dimensionals instead of interdimensionals. I think they're outside of our solar system, which the map showed, and they were able to travel through a wormhole, a black hole, or however they bend the space around us, and the different dimensions that we will discuss about in a later podcast. But if you try to study the dimensionals, you'll find that it's so confusing. And even when we go to try to explain it to you, it's very, we look at 1 and 2, it's kind of like a flat photo. And we look at three, more like a three-dimensional that things kind of get together. But anyway, we'll get into that in another podcast. But these abductions, you can find quite a few of them over the history of the study of the Blue Books investigations and a few of the files that the FBI has had and they've researched. I really believe that these people had something done to them. They're just it's always the lights that are flashing and things like that it's just, I could see moving through time and space causes a warp in time and causes a warp in the atmosphere, and it can be reflected back as what we perceive as lights.
It seems like these people that are being abducted, the majority of them is for human harvest. They're getting samples of our skin and our hair and everything else. The one with Travis Walton, however, it just seems like he was maybe in the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't believe they took samples, did they?
No, and according to some of the investigators, they've concluded that it appears that these entities appear in our atmosphere or appear to us, and they have a mission, and they stay within that mission. If it's the mission to gather plants, they gather plants. If it's the mission of gathering intelligence on our bodies and how our system works, I think they do that. So, you're right. I think Travis was one of those times where his abduction was not part of the plan. And remember, I said, and he said during the investigations, they never talked to him mentally. No
telepathy.
Telepathy. So they weren't prepared for that. So they just didn't do it.
Yeah.
So and also they had to do everything so quickly. That's the reason you heard him talk about one that came and got him from the control room, had on a clear glass helmet, and the other ones did not. So they didn't have time to put their stories together and get all the facts straight. So I really believe that one was a true. They probably saved his life.
Yeah.
Because their mission was not to take life; it was to save life. And there's one episode out there back in New Mexico, back many years ago, where they were testing rockets, where supposedly a sergeant and a major were out looking for parts of a missile, and the major was abducted and he was mutilated. And
oh my!
That's the only one that I've been able to find where they talked about there was a death involved in the abduction. And so, and then here, you have to take them all with the facts of who these people are and why they would be talking about this stuff. I think during the investigation they found out that there was a UFO on the radar in the area which they said that the abduction took place. But it's like the military guys said, and I agree with them. It would be very unlikely you're going to find a sergeant and a major out walking through the fields looking for parts of a rocket. There's too many airmen out there that would actually be doing this sort of thing. They would not have a major unless the major was out there with a bunch of airmen and he was in command of them and he was overseeing the operation. But I can't see him being out there with one other person looking for parts unless that part was highly confidential and highly classified. And so we never know. That could have been the case, but just him and a sergeant out there looking for parts, it just didn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah.
As a military guy.
One thing that I feel points to the fact that they are extra dimensional as opposed to extraterrestrial is we haven't heard of seeing spaceships, UFOs in outer space.
Well, there's always been spotted spots in our past history where they've seen strange objects from our spacecraft that we have up there, and things are being fallen. But that still doesn't mean that it's extraterrestrial, because of the fact that it's hard for me to believe that these entities, which we do have stealth equipment, and we can fly under radar and this sort of thing, but here again, you just never know.
Yeah. I feel like if we can't find, we do have space exploration. If we can't find them in our universe, they're not on Earth. I've not seen any huge garages.
I think the government is really trying to hide stuff from us because, like I said, they kind of hint around about, Mars having people there, water support. They kind of hint around about the moon, and they show these bright pictures that are fuzzy, but they're, it's just like the camera got dirt on the lens or something. So I really think that they're messing with the film, and they're messing with the data, and they're trying to lead us into something. Maybe they're trying to make it sound like they're from, it's easier for us to understand somebody coming through space to get to us, other than through time and space in another dimension sweeping through. But I think they have proof of some of this stuff with all the research we've been doing here lately. It's just the fact that for whatever reason, they don't want to panic the people.
Yeah, they only want to tell us a very small amount to pacify us.
Yeah, and everybody said, well, the president would know all. No, the president wouldn't know that stuff. There's too many layers in there that they can keep things from everybody. Yeah. So it's just, and I know that from a military standpoint. Just like, they just hide stuff all the time. Nixon was saying there's no troops in Thailand, there's no troops in Cambodia, and I was sitting in Cambodia reading the newspaper that my prior wife sent to me, and it says, and on the headline it says, no troops in Cambodia. We're not, and I was there. So they hide stuff. They don't want people to know everything. Now, the missions that we had there were serious and they needed to be done, but I don't know why we would just keep lying to the people. But
did you have strange occurrences in Cambodia?
There's been sightings of people from other dimensions all over the world, dating back to the pyramids. So there's no doubt in my military mind that we're seeing something, and something's been here. It's just confusing on what it is. And then we start talking about the fact that, how do you put religion into this? Well, we're going to get into that because I've been doing some research on that, and it's really interesting about the aspect of the religion part of it. So
yeah, I've heard some religious people saying that the visitors are demons.
Well, yeah, it's the fact that you can make anything what you want it to be, right?
Exactly.
It's like when I saw the little girl, or the evidence of the little girl over on Old Salisbury Road outside of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. People saying, well, sweet little girl, but that's a demon. The demons have ways of what in the world would that child being a demon? What was he trying to project onto me or anybody else?
Exactly.
Okay, I just don't understand that. I can understand if he was trying to change the way I perceive stuff, or if he was trying to make me do something that was not right, illegal in our terminology, but against humanity. But it's not. I mean, it's just an image of a little girl that appears there, and to numerous people, and with no harm. I mean, if anything, the little girls opened doors for people, and when they had their hands full.
Yes.
Now these people won't come back into her house, but other than that, she's tried to help people, and even one of the instances where they were going downstairs, the entity turned the lights on so that the lady wouldn't fall, and she thanked her little buddy that she was babysitting. He says, I didn't turn those lights on. So, the little girl looks after this lady. And so if that's a demon, so be it. But, that word in the beliefs of many people, and everybody has the right to believe whatever they want to believe.
Exactly.
But I'm thinking that word's used out of context there. And I'm not saying there's not some demons out there. Now, get me wrong. With the people that have been scratched, and the people that have been burnt, and the people that have run into things that it's very highly detrimental to them. Then I'd say, there is a demon out there.
Yeah.
But there's good and bad in everybody, so it's going to be one of those things. But you can't label everything as demons.
And that's true, and I think it really has to be on a case-by-case basis.
I agree wholeheartedly.
If the little girl was trying to kill you or possess you, I think that you could lean more towards a demon. But in this case, I would say she's just a spirit, and we know that there are good spirits because we have the Holy Spirit.
Sure, the Holy Ghost. Well, this is it's been very interesting. Yes. I've enjoyed tonight. I hope our listeners have enjoyed tonight. And so, until we get into another episode, please continue to listen to the Mothman Podcast.
And we would love for you to share your paranormal encounters with us, or have us investigate for you by emailing us at mothman-podcast@gmail.com.
And don't forget, if you need to call us, that you can always call us at area code 336-268-0018. Please leave us a number, and we will get back to you just as soon as we can. So until next time, I hope everybody has a great holiday season, and
have a spooky evening.
Good night from the Mothman.
Good night.